Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the third week of April 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. This week, we're talking about some major leadership changes at Ford, Volkswagen taking a big financial hit for canceling its ID4 in Tennessee, Nissan's new strategic vision, and Toyota's ambitious plan to recruit Lexus dealers for its new GR Performance brand. Joining me as always, Larry Velaquette, who covers Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru for us at Automotive News. Larry Legend, welcome back.
Welcome to the weekend, Cal.
All right. And Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW. Mike, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing all right. Better now that you guys are here.
It's always the best way to start my weekend, I got to tell you.
I say it sarcastically. But let's start with Ford. I'm kidding. Mike, Doug is leaving the company next month. He came from Apple and Tesla back in 2021 to help transform Ford into a software-driven automaker. What's behind this departure, and what does this tell us about where Ford is headed?
You know, it's a significant loss for the company. Jim Farley described it as a watershed moment back in 2021 when they were able to get Doug Field into their ranks. He had worked at Tesla, he worked at Apple, allegedly on that secret car project that never went anywhere. But he was a big name and he was a big talent. He had what may have been the toughest job at Ford, which was trying to modernize it and blend the sort of old world engineering, metal bending piece of the company with all this young tech focused Silicon Valley software talent. And he had the famous quote after he just started and said, "I don't care if you wear bunny slippers to work, just come in. We need the best talent. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you look like." So he had a tough job. As Larry knows, as all you guys know, this industry is not super quick to change. And it's very siloed, particularly at Ford. So he was in charge of the EV stuff and the software stuff. The platform that underpins the Blue Cruise driver assist system, for example. He didn't really launch the Lightning and the Mach-E, but he helped sort of improve them once they were launched and prepare Ford's next generation of EVs. So the timing of his departure is a little suspect because his baby is this upcoming UEV platform that tears up Henry Ford's assembly line and uses gigacastings for the first time and will underpin a bunch of models. The first model is set to come out next year. So he's leaving less than a year before it launches. It's not ideal, but I was talking with a lot of folks within the company this week. Everybody says this was not a force out. He has sort of long planned to leave once the teams he was overseeing matured enough and had enough reps under their belt, so to speak, to sort of stand on their own. And that's what you're seeing Ford do here. It's going to merge his teams with what it calls the industrial system. That's the manufacturing, the quality, that sort of stuff. And they're going to become one team and hopefully be a little more efficient. So Doug Field wanted to stay as long as it took to get the new guys up to speed and integrated within the company. He feels mission accomplished there.
Now, as you said, Mike, they are combining their EV teams with traditional engineering under COO Kumar Galhotra. What's the thinking behind that move?
So they had these two different teams sort of working on separate things. You had the quote unquote industrial system that was working on manufacturing efficiencies, quality improvements, sort of the traditional kind of cycle planning, automaking kind of stuff. On the other side, you had Doug Fields' team. It's always awkward. You had Mark Fields and Doug Field at Ford, different times, but still difficult. So you had Doug's teams really shaking things up, moving at that startup speed that they like to phrase it as, in terms of developing software, changing how they develop EVs to be more competitive with the Teslas and the Rivians and the Chinese automakers of the world. And now they're sort of fusing the best of both worlds. They want to take what Ford's doing with that UEV platform and apply a lot of those learnings and a lot of those efficiencies across their system for gas and hybrid powertrains as well. So, Jim Farley split the company a few years back into gas, into EV, into fleet and business unit. And now they're not bringing them back together, but you're starting to see more of an interplay between the sides. And that's sort of what this is about.
Larry, what's your thoughts on this?
Mike brought up a very good point, and this has been a consistent pain point with the auto industry. I mean, the auto industry is, 130 years old if you go back all the way, right? 30 years older than automotive news, at least. But here's the thing that we're running up against. This industry, as Mike said, moves slowly. It has to. People's lives are on the line. And we can't take the, fake it till you make it strategy that works in Silicon Valley. The stakes are too high. People's lives, billions of dollars in investment. Still, things go wrong. There is a natural frustration if you've spent your life in industries where the pace of innovation moves more quickly, that are not as bureaucratic as automakers are, that are not as huge and slow to turn as automakers are. And people come in and they want to be agents of change, and we wish them well, but it's very difficult to change this industry. Each time that we've seen people come in and with these big splash hirings, we're going to make changes, we're going to speed up, and they do incrementally, but big changes, they're just too hard to make without rewriting the ripping it all down to the base and starting over, which frankly is what the Chinese are doing. And it's one of the reasons they're moving so much faster than we are.
That's a great point. Now let's shift to Volkswagen. Larry, VW is taking a massive financial hit this quarter after shutting down ID4 production at its Chattanooga plant. What's your take on what's happening there?
Well, I mean, they think it's going to be about a $500 to $600 million hit. That's what analysts are saying. That is a huge number for Volkswagen to have to eat, because they had put all their eggs in this basket. The ID4, when they launched it, I was covering VW when they launched it. It was right in, positioned right in the center of the market. If there was going to be an EV revolution, they thought, okay, this is the segment to start in. The problem that they had is that it took them a very long time to get this product going. When they delivered it, it was very tech forward. I'll just say that, right? I'm going to give you a great example. And you don't only had to open the door to see where that things were going to get difficult, right? You open the door of the ID4, and it's a 4-door vehicle. It had 2 window switches for the front seat. Not 4 like every other 4-door vehicle that has 4 windows that go up and down. It had 2, and it had a little toggle switch to go to where you had to decide if you were opening the front windows or the back windows. It was a 2-step process.
Time out. Why would anyone think that's a good idea? I'm sorry to interrupt. That's crazy. A toggle switch to decide if I roll down the back or why?
You know why? Because the doors were designed too skinny to accommodate a 4-switch panel. I mean, it's a tiny example, right? But right. It launched. It took a very long time to get to market. It launched. VW had to do this. Remember from the fallout from their Dieselgate issues, right? They were going to lead the EV revolution with this product, and it didn't really sell because people got in it. By the time that it got to market, Tesla was there with the Model 3. And so they were launching into the face of some stiff competition. Plus, they had all these other automakers who were throwing vehicles in. They didn't have a big enough footprint or a big enough kind of mandate to win those customers. And it just kind of died on the vine.
Now, Larry, Bernstein analysts say VW will actually benefit from not selling what they call this unprofitable vehicle. Now, that sounds extremely brutal. What went wrong with the ID4 in Tennessee?
Well, we just talked a little bit about this. What Bernstein said, I just want to say, reminded me a little bit. If you remember when Sergio Marchionne used to beg people not to buy the Fiat 500e, right? This is about a decade ago. It was a brand new vehicle. He's like, look, this is a compliance vehicle, and I lose $14,000 or $19,000 on every one that I sell. Please don't buy it. This is what automakers have to do in order to get, in order to be able to sell in different markets. At that time, it was California. They had to field an EV, but he was losing money on everything, and he was begging people, please don't buy this car. Right? The same thing is going on here with the ID4. They've ended production now. They ended this month. They have enough in stock that will probably last them well into next year, even during a sell down. So because of the issues that we have here, they're going to retool Chattanooga to do something else, to do other vehicles. And Chattanooga is a nice plant. It was built in 2011. It is modern. It is energy efficient as all get out. So they'll be okay there without it. But it's going to be a drag for a while.
ID4 coming to a rental car center near you. Now, Mike, you cover
the rental car agencies. They know all about.
Oh, they don't even want it.
EVs.
Oh.
No,
they don't even want it. Oh, that's bad. All right, now, Mike, you cover the UAW, which just scored a historic first in Chattanooga with their contract with workers there. What's the union angle here?
Yeah, but there's about 3,200 workers in Chattanooga that are feeling pretty good about the fact that they have a signed contract in place right about now. Because not only did they get historic wage gains and a new bonus structure and things like that with this contract, they also got some job security. They got VW to promise to explore other production models in Chattanooga. They got some language on outsourcing and cutting shifts and things of that nature. So this is score one for unionization. This is probably going to protect a lot of workers who would be vulnerable otherwise. But as Larry pointed out, it's a pretty big modern plant. The Atlas that they also build there is pretty popular. So they probably didn't need to worry too much, at least in the near term. But it's nice that because of this union deal, they do have some protections they wouldn't have otherwise had. Now, in terms of what they would want there, I think Sean Fain and anybody in the union would tell you they'll build whatever, gas, electric, solid state battery, those Flintstone cars that you're powered with your feet. They don't care what they build. They just want some type of knowledge that it's not going to be a fly-by-night thing, that they'll be building it 1 month or 1 year and not the next. They want as long of a runway as possible into the future to see, so these workers can have some security. So for the most part, I think they're probably feeling pretty good right about now.
Good stuff, guys. Coming up, we'll talk about this week's news from Nissan as it solidifies its strategy to turn things around for the Japanese automaker here in the U.S. That's next on Weekend Drive.
The Iran war is squeezing global supply chains, and one of the biggest pressure points right now is helium. Experts say shortages could start causing problems soon.
The East and Southeast Asian facilities are already starting to run low on helium supply, and I think we will see production shortages starting in the next weeks.
On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, I'm joined by Stefan Kies, senior partner at Roland Berger North America. He explains why the conflict is constricting helium supply. We'll get into why that matters for semiconductor production and ultimately critical vehicle technologies like high-end driver assistance features, memory chips, and power electronics. I'm Molly Boygon. Join me on Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker, joined by Larry Bellaquette and Michael Martinez. So, Mike, let's talk Nissan. CEO Ivan Espinosa unveiled a new long-term vision this week, and we had him on Thursday's Daily Drive. The big headline is that global sales have fallen for 6 of the past 7 fiscal years, but Espinosa says that that's about to change. What do you make of the automaker's plan?
Well, the thing that sort of intrigues me the most is that at least part of it appears to be addition by subtraction, right? They want to grow, but they're cutting their global portfolio 20%. I think the report was down to 45 models from 56 today. And among those remaining vehicles, it's going to share a lot more of the powertrains and broaden the type of powertrain each model has. So I think Nissan may be learning a lesson here. We're seeing them. They said they're going to focus on pickup trucks and body on frame SUVs for the US market, which seems like a no brainer. But I think Nissan's learning what a lot of automakers have learned, that complexity can kill you. I know, just as an example, Ford has dealt with this numerous times. It seems like every half decade or so, they realize, why do we have 10 different configurations in terms of side mirrors or, back row seating? So even though you're coming out with a lot of different products and you're giving customers that power of choice, that may not benefit you because you need to sort of focus it on the choices that they actually want. So it seems like he's saying all the right things. Whether or not he achieves the sales targets he's talking about, I think they mentioned a 30% boost in sales per nameplate once they sort of call the herd there. I don't know if that's attainable, but it certainly seems like he's learned a lesson a lot of folks have realized over the years.
Now, Larry, one pillar of this plan is rolling out more hybrids, including e-Power and a new parallel hybrid setup with V6 engines. The 4th generation Rogue launches this year as hybrid only at first. How critical are hybrids to this?
Well, I think hybrids, as every automaker is finding out, short of Toyota, have become really important all of a sudden. They were the natural middle step between an all gas lineup, or gas and diesel, and moving to something that was electrified where you could save some fuel economy. Many automakers decided not to pursue hybrid strategies. They went all in because that's what they went all in on an EV strategy because that's what the market rewarded, and that's what investors rewarded when everybody was trying to be the next Tesla. In the process, they got ahead of consumers. What you're seeing now is consumers saying, look, we're willing to contribute. I think we're willing to contribute to reducing greenhouse gases. We're willing to contribute to, protecting nature, as long as we don't have to give up too much. And this is a logical middle step, right? For Nissan, hybrids are important. They're not as important, frankly, as the other news that our colleague Urvash Kakaria came out with this month, which is that they've reduced their dependence on fleet sales. The best way to describe where Nissan was and is going, and I don't use this lightly, but it had an addiction, right? It had a sales addiction. It had an addiction to growth, and whenever automakers chase volume and chase market share and are willing to pay to chase that, fleet is a quick hit, man. for many automakers. Because remember, automakers get paid when the car drives out the factory door. They don't wait for it to sell. They get paid when it drives out the factory door. And if they've got volume that's unsold, if they've got volume coming off their factory line to keep their factory efficient, and that is unsold, they throw it into fleet. That's always been the relief valve for the industry. But it can be an addiction. And if you're addicted to fleet, and Nissan, it had cut its fleet addiction to 25% of what it produced, which is crazy. That's 2.5 times what Toyota does with fleet. It is not the sign of a strong automaker.
All right. Well, finally, Larry, let's talk about Toyota's push with the GR brand. They built this massive 36,000 square foot GR Experience Center in Frisco, Texas, which you were allowed to see 8 months ago, even before it was shown to dealers. What's the play here?
So what they're doing, they built this, and as you say, I got to see it in August. I was under a pretty strict NDA, which sucks for a reporter, right? My job is to tell people things, and hey, we're going to show you this early, but you can't tell anybody. We've finally got out from underneath that. So what this is in December they showed the GR-GT, which is a 641 horsepower, 2-seat street legal racer, basically. That is, super well balanced. I hesitate to call it a sports car because it's really a Grand Tour because it is street legal. But this is the first vehicle of this new GR brand that they're building. It's their first new brand in the United States since Scion folded a decade ago. They're launching this with racing legacy, right? So in this GR Experience Center in Frisco, they showed me this vehicle, but they also built this center as kind of a celebration of their racing heritage. The idea was first to convince Lexus dealers to want to buy one of these GR franchises, and they have now over 100 that have done so around the nation. And secondly, they're going to use it to attract GR customers to want to come and order and pick up delivery of their custom-built GR vehicles there. They've also done an ancillary program at Eagles Canyon Raceway, which is about 50 miles away. There, they are going to have a fleet of 42 GR vehicles. These are GR Corollas, and which is a 300 horsepower, tiny little pocket rocket, and a number of other GR vehicles for people to learn how to drive. And then they will have GR GTs for people to learn how to drive on the track with their new $200,000 plus vehicles.
Question, Larry. Why didn't they do this under the TRD program?
Well, the TRD program is kind of an add-on for, and it wasn't the brainchild of Akio Toyota like GR was. That's the short answer.
I feel like TRD is such an established name. Like you see it, everyone knows Toyota Racing Development. So I'm like, why don't you just run with that? That is a familiar name that everyone kind of knows already instead of like, oh, this GR experience. Because when I think of GR, I think of GT, R, which is Nissan. Like immediately that like confusion, as an enthusiast kind of jumps in my head. But
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's that's a great question. All I will say is that GR is an acronym for Gazoo Racing, which is the in-house racing program, not TRD. TRD is largely used as a trim level for a lot of Toyota vehicles and is pretty exclusive to Toyota, right?
Right.
Gazoo Racing is going to be, this is the Lexus side of it.
All right, tomato. Mike, GR is taking on some serious competition in the high performance space. What are the biggest challenges they face?
Well, you hit on one of them, Kel, is just brand recognition, right? With that new name. But I think obviously the Europeans are stiff competition. Just ask Ford and GM as they try to get back into some higher end racing series and come out with their own supercars. But at the end of the day, I think this is probably a smart move, right? If you have that sort of multiple $100,000 vehicle, it serves as a halo for the rest of your brand. It can draw some buzz and some attention in markets that you wouldn't otherwise be reaching. And if they do go into certain racing programs, you can see a lot trickle down into the main lineup in terms of technologies or even features within the vehicle. So seems like a smart idea. They do have some stiff competition, but you would imagine there's enough people who would be intrigued by a Toyota supercar to buy it, to sort of be that walking billboard for the brand that could help it further down the road.
Yeah, Kel, it's worth mentioning here, and I should have mentioned it earlier. They think that the GR GT is the natural successor to the Lexus LFA. Now, the LFA was a very short-lived supercar. It was an extraordinary car.
Mm-hmm.
It is beautiful. The gas tank was way too small, but it was extraordinary. Very finely tuned, high-performance vehicle. That's what they were going for. Those are the customers that they're chasing now, that they want to chase. The folks who will climb, over a glass to get to this car. That's who they're targeting.
And they seem to be going about it in a very smart way with this experience center, right? It can't just be a product. It needs to be an experience, for lack of a different word.
Yeah.
And you've seen brands around the country sort of, whether it's off-roading, whether it's track performance, whatever that vehicle may be, craft an idea, craft a 1 or 2 day or a weekend trip out of the product itself, and that draws more and more engaged customers, I think.
People love a good live activation where you can go and actually get your hands on it, drive it, do all the things. So totally makes sense. Good stuff, fellas. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Per usual.
Thanks,
Thank
Cal.
you, Cal.
All right, that's all for this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help this week. You can get the latest news on leadership changes, product strategy, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back on Monday for a look at how the Iran war is threatening helium supplies, which automakers and suppliers depend on for chip production and other tech.
We are now basically 2 months into the conflict, and therefore semiconductor facilities are really struggling at the moment to keep sufficient helium supply available.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.